In the White House, Vice President Nixon has a brief farewell conference with Ike before leaving on his 11-day tour of the Soviet Union, which will include informal talks with Khrushchev. Then on to Baltimore's Friendship Airport, where a Boeing 707 jetliner stands ready for the flight to Moscow. Russian Ambassador Menshikov bids farewell to Mr. and Mrs. Nixon, jovial despite the anti-American propaganda campaign launched in Russia to coincide with Nixon's arrival. Also making the flight, a standby team of Russian airmen who will assist in the landing at Moscow. After opening the American fair in the Russian capital, the Nixons will tour the Soviet Union, hoping to meet many ordinary citizens as well as the nation's leaders, and to express America's desire for peace.
This is the city of Moscow in the summer of 1959. The capital of the Soviet Union is an old city. It was established along the Moscow River over 800 years ago.
It was still a very closed society. People were very suspicious, and it was tough going for quite a while. It was interesting. We were sort of exploring all kinds of new avenues of contact and negotiation, and it worked.
July 24th, the first large-scale American exhibition ever to be held in the Soviet Union, receives a throng of visitors.
That was really the first evidence of a thaw after a very, very long 40-year winter between the United States and the Soviet Union.
The exhibit was the beginning of a cultural exchange that went on for years. It included everything from scientific work to artistic exhibits and informational exhibits. Often we were told by visitors that it opened the world to them. They had no way of traveling out, but the world came to them. The Soviets must have recognized the potential impact of the exhibit.
Guides and demonstrators find the response almost overpowering as the visitors crowd round the exhibits. The Soviet people display a great desire for information about America. Much credit for the success of the exhibition must go to the 75 young men and women guides. Exhibition director Chad McClellan warmly congratulates each one of them. No better goodwill ambassadors could have been found. They worked themselves to the point of physical exhaustion, telling America's story and answering the endless barrage of questions. They proved themselves to be walking encyclopedias, and the Soviet visitors said again and again how wonderful it was to talk to these young Americans who spoke Russian so fluently.
The people just wanted to keep talking. They wanted to keep talking. And this candor and sincerity happened time and time again. Public diplomacy obviously happened every moment of every day that all of us were working there. But that was public diplomacy at a different level. The Vice President and the Premier were speaking unprepared, with a candor and energy that the world hadn't seen yet. And nobody could know what that would produce.
But on this occasion, traditional diplomacy goes by the board, and the story of the fair itself is eclipsed by a crackling exchange between Nixon and Khrushchev. Every aspect of the Cold War and Soviet-American rivalry is argued in blunt and forthright terms. The threat of atomic warfare, diplomacy by ultimatum, economic progress. Says Mr. Key, the Soviet will overtake America and then wave bye-bye.
During this conversation, Mr. Khrushchev got belligerent. He was very critical of America and what we were trying to do with this exhibition, that we were just trying to impose our ideas upon the Soviet people and so forth. And Nixon did not respond. He was polite. And Nixon turned to Ambassador Thompson and he said, "What gives with this guy? He's being very nasty. If he starts this again, I'm going to let him have it."
Both Khrushchev and Nixon appear to enjoy themselves. Says Khrushchev, he is a communist spokesman dealing with a capitalist lawyer.
Yes,
all that I can say, from the way you talk and the way you dominate the conversation, you would have made a good lawyer yourself.
And they really were going at each other. At one moment, I thought they were going to come to blows. But every time it came to that moment, they all backed up, they laughed and embraced each other. It became sort of the symbol of our relationship. We fought at each other, and then we embraced, and then we fought again, and then we embraced. And that became sort of the symbol of our continuing relationship over the next 30 years.
Soviet Union. That's a fair bargain.
To millions of Soviet citizens, the summer of 1959 will be remembered as the summer of the American National Exhibition, the summer when America came to Moscow.
People did remember this exhibit. This was the first experience that any Soviet citizen had with America in person, and it made a tremendous impact.